Kumasi was alive with energy, but not for Kofi. While others were rushing to make sales, his small printing shop sat in silence. The signboard was peeling, the shelves were dusty, and the old machine rattled every time it started. Customers hardly came by anymore, and each passing day felt heavier than the last. Kofi was only 28, but the weight on his shoulders made him look older. Every morning, he walked to his shop with the same painful question running through his mind. Why me? Why is life this hard? Debt piled up like a mountain. Disappointment followed him like a shadow. Failure seemed to mock him at every turn. To Kofi, his life was a collection of problems without answers. But what he didn't know was that his story was about to take a different turn. Not because of sudden wealth, not because of luck, but because of something far more powerful, the way he chose to think. One hot morning, the kind that makes tempers rise quickly, trouble walked straight into Kofi's shop. A customer burst through the door, waving a banner meant for his daughter's wedding. The ink was smudged, the colors looked dull. Is this what you call printing? The man shouted, his voice echoing through the quiet street. His words cut deeper than the mistake itself. Neighbors turned their heads, watching from outside. Kofi's heart sank. His palms grew sweaty, his chest tightened. He tried to apologize, but the man's anger drowned his words. Shame washed over him. Another failure, another reminder that nothing was working. At that very moment, his childhood friend Yo walked in. He looked around, saw the banner tossed aside, and then looked at Kofi's tired face. With calmness in his voice, Yo said, Kofi, my brother. Train your mind to see the positive in everything. Positive is a choice. But Kofi, still burning with embarrassment, snapped back. Easy for you to say, Yo. You have customers, money, a family that supports you. Look at me. Everything is falling apart. Yo didn't argue. He simply placed a hand on Kofi's shoulder, gave him a knowing look, and walked away. Kofi stood in silence. His friend's words echoing in his mind, refusing to leave. Positive is a choice. That night, sleep refused to visit Kofi. He tossed and turned on his worn-out mattress, his mind replaying the day's humiliation like a broken record. But one sentence from Yo kept echoing in his head, positive is a choice. He sighed deeply, whispering into the darkness. Positive is a choice. What does that even mean for someone like me? As the silence stretched, a thought struck him like a spark in the night. What if my thoughts are the real prison? What if I've been locking myself inside chains I built with my own mind? For the first time in weeks, instead of cursing what he didn't have, Kofi forced himself to notice what he still did. He looked at the machine and whispered, at least I have one. Many people don't. He looked at his calloused hands and said softly, at least I have skills. These hands still know how to work. Finally, he placed his hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. At least I'm alive. And if I'm alive, maybe there's still hope. And in that quiet moment, nothing in his life had changed. His debts were still there, his shop still small. But something within him shifted. For the first time in weeks, Kofi felt a flicker of peace. And the beginning of a new kind of strength. The next morning, the heavens opened. Rain poured down without mercy. Inside Kofi's little shop, water dripped steadily through the old, rusted roof. Sheets of paper curled and buckled under the wetness. Ink ran like rivers across the floor. The old Kofi would have thrown his hands in the air, cursing his bad luck, blaming the universe for adding another wound to his struggling life. But this time, he paused. He took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the ruined papers. And then, instead of anger, a small smile crept across his face. He picks up a knife and begins trimming them into neat, smaller sheets. Softly, he whispered to himself, at least these papers are not completely useless. I can recycle them. I can make notebooks. Children still need books for school. That very day, he set to work, cutting the damaged sheets, binding them together with scraps of cardboard, turning loss into possibility. Kofi hands one child a small notebook. The child flips through it with wide eyes, smiling. Soon, more children rush in, coins clutched in their hands. By evening, a line had formed in front of his shop. School children, their eyes bright with excitement, clutched the simple notebooks. They laughed, they thanked him, they came back for more. Kofi stood at the doorway, watching as his little experiment turned into something bigger than he imagined. What looked like disaster in the morning had become an opportunity by nightfall. In just 1 week, something remarkable happened. Word spread quickly through the community. Kofi had affordable notebooks for schoolchildren. Parents came, smiling with relief, thanking him for making something so useful out of what was once considered waste. Mothers said, "You've made life easier for us." Fathers shook his hand, proud that a local young man was solving a problem for the community. The children adored the notebooks, not just because they were cheap, but because Kofi had taken time to design playful, colorful covers. Some had bright patterns, others had simple drawings of birds, stars, and footballs. For the children, they weren't just books, they were treasures. And as Kofi watched his notebooks sell faster than he could make them, a quiet truth dawned on him. The rain that had once felt like his enemy had actually become his friend. What looked like a disaster was, in fact, a blessing in disguise. And from that day forward, Kofi began to see life with new eyes. Every challenge was no longer a curse, but a doorway to hidden opportunities. But just when life seemed to be turning around, another storm came. Not from the skies, but from the hands of men. One night, under the cover of darkness, thieves broke into Kofi's shop. They smashed the lock, turned over drawers, and carried away almost all the money he had painfully saved. By morning, the news spread through the neighborhood. People gathered outside his shop, whispering, shaking their heads. Everyone expected Kofi to collapse in tears, to rage at the heavens, to give up on the little progress he had made. Neighbors watch him closely, waiting for an outburst. Instead, Kofi takes a slow breath, his face calm though his eyes reveal the weight of loss. But when Kofi finally spoke, his words stunned them all. He sighed and said quietly, almost to himself. "They may have taken my money. But they did not take my skills. They did not take my creativity. They did not take my mind. And as long as I still have these, I can start again." His calmness settled over the crowd like a strange kind of peace. Instead of pity, his neighbors felt something different. Admiration. His strength, born not of wealth but of thought, inspired everyone who heard him that day. In that single moment, Kofi taught his entire community a lesson: true power is not in what life gives you, but in how you choose to respond when life takes something away. Months passed, and the tide of Kofi's life turned in ways he never imagined. His recycled notebooks had become so popular that schools began placing large orders. Local businesses, impressed by his designs, gave him contracts for banners and flyers. The once forgotten shop at the corner of the street now buzzed with activity from morning till night. Where there used to be silence, there was now the constant sound of laughter, chatter, and the rhythmic hum of machines at work. He sees Kofi behind the counter, smiling warmly as he hands notebooks to a group of children. One afternoon, Ya, the childhood friend who had once spoken simple but powerful words, returned to see the change for himself. He paused at the doorway, smiling proudly as he watched his friend work. Ya said with a grin. "Now you see, Kofi. The happiness in your life doesn't depend on what you own. It depends on the quality of your thoughts." Kofi chuckled, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You were right, my brother. I didn't change my life. I changed my mind. And my mind changed my life." Kofi's journey holds a powerful truth. One that reaches beyond the walls of his little shop. Life will always throw storms, disappointments, and setbacks our way. You may not control the rain that leaks through your roof, or the thieves that steal from your pocket. But there is something you can always control: the way you choose to think. Kofi discovered that when you train your mind to see the positive in everything, life itself begins to change. Positive is not luck. Positive is not magic. Positive is a choice. And when you choose it, when you decide to focus on possibilities instead of problems, happiness no longer feels distant. It becomes part of your daily life. Kofi's life shows us that storms will always come, but they don't have to drown us. The difference is in the mind. When you choose to see hope instead of despair, opportunity instead of loss, and growth instead of failure, you discover that every setback can become a new beginning. Remember, positivity is not luck, it's a choice you must make every day. Every setback can be the beginning of something greater when you choose positivity. Remember, the happiness in your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching Geraldinho Stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. And always remember, the power to change your life begins with the way you think.